this opportunity, and also and as far as this session is concerned, I don't want it to be a formal session. Just want to share some experience, my experience, in fact, as far as litigation is. I also do some matters in the honorable courts of Punjab and Haryana. And as far as my uh, educational background is concerned, I completed my engineering from National Institute of Technology. After that, I had worked also, and then I took a small, and then a mix of a thoughtful decision, as well as, you may say, it just happened that I decided to pursue law because of various reasons. I can describe those reasons later on. And I then appeared for the Campus Law Center, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi examination. I was fortunate enough to clear it, and then I completed my 3-year law. So after completing my 3 years, I worked with the Supreme Court advocate for close to 2.5 years. And the good part working with him was that he would encourage you to have your own matters. So at the same time I took up my own matters. I got some experience, and as far as his office was concerned, I did almost everything. So I was drafting, I was engaging with the clients, I was appearing in the matters, I was arguing as well, and then uh, I got some experience on how to handle the office. And there are several factors. For instance, you have to ensure that the a person, a clerk, is a person who's as important as the office is.
Right.
So you have to keep him also engaged, and all those things. And then in 2018, I decided that I need to start my own practice,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I started my independent practice. So right now, as far as the litigation part is concerned, I'm handling cases ranging from largely criminal. Uh, I have consumer matters, I have RERA matters, I have matters in High Court, I have matters in Supreme Court, I have some civil matters, and then I also do advisory work. I'm also on uh, the panel of banks. Then
Right.
I uh, uh, am also sort of uh, I do mix of corporate stuff also. For instance, you have to vet contracts, drafting, etc., etc. That also I
Right. I think
do.
that's what initial practice is more about, right? So we do a mix
Yes,
of jobs,
yes,
mix of assignments. So, to move forward, I think a lot of people, often ask, for people who switch their field, like you did, you came from engineering to law. I came from chartered accountancy to law, and then a lot of people ask because, even though a lot of chartered accountants pursue LLB degrees, but they do not come into practice, full-time law practice. They still continue to do their auditing practices, accounting practices, and serve their clients. But a very few chartered accountants devote full-time or pursue law as a full-time career. So most of the people ask me, why law after doing chartered accountancy or coming from a professional background. So my reason was pretty simple because at that point in time, maybe I was a little naive and didn't have any idea as to how to progress my career forward because, working with the audit firm for almost 3 or 4 years during the chartered accountancy course, I didn't want to do that at that point in time. And then maybe wanted to see a corporate life. So, after completing my chartered accountancy, I joined a multinational company So I did my CA in Delhi itself. So I was working there for a year, and in a year it was more kind of a peer pressure too, right? So everyone was trying to, after a year of work experience, everyone was trying to do their MBAs or some other stuffs, or go into entrepreneurship and stuff. So I think that was a kind of peer pressure also. And so at that point in time, I had researched about courses, and I thought maybe somewhere down the line I had this feeling that I'll go for practice. So that might be a reason that that also helped me to choose law. And also the like getting into Delhi University itself is a great thing, I guess. So what were your reasons to come from an engineering background to a law? Because most of the people go to MBAs or some other stuff.
Yes. Yes. So uh, generally, what happens is once you complete your engineering, the obvious next step would be an MBA,
Right.
and people consider an MBA course as an upgradation to their, I would say, their professional career. Because what they see is that tomorrow, uh, a- after the engineering, after spending some time in a particular company, they would obviously move on to the next step, which is the supervisory or the managerial level. So what they feel is that this MBA degree would give them that extra impetus, I would say, that extra push, and therefore that's the general obvious step. For me, I would say it was I already stated that it was a mix of a thoughtful decision as well as, let's say, a decision wherein I did not think much. Because when I was working, I used to watch debates, TV debates, and when I used to see these debates, I would see one or the other lawyer defending either the government or a client on important critical issues. So I was, of course, motivated as well as inspired that law is one field uh, which you can which I had not earlier thought of, is one field you must explore. Because see, I'll not talk about people, I'll not talk about students living in Delhi. I will talk about students, I will talk about people living in far off places where they don't have career options. So generally, in our society, we think that people who are good in studies would generally opt for medical or non-medical, and people who are average, they would either opt for arts and other uh, career courses. So this is how the division is. But I think we should not be we should not prejudge these issues, and we should give uh, time to people to think about their career choices. And as far as, see, as far as doing law after engineering, or you doing CA after law after CA, if you see today the legal practice, it's already multidisciplinary.
Right.
So if you talk about, let's say, your case, lot of lot of people who do CA, they come into law and they practice in corporate litigation, for instance, this NCLT, NCLAT litigation, or the corporate litigation. Then you have tax lawyers. Most of these tax lawyers are people who have either a background in accountancy or they are certified CAs. Likewise, in engineering also, a lot of people are now moving towards IPR, intellectual property rights. I also did a small internship in intellectual property rights, and I understood the relevance of my engineering background in understanding the field of IPRs. For instance, when a design comes to you, now, for instance, I am a mechanical engineer, I would easily interpret a design and then would use my that engineering knowledge to the IPR knowledge or the legal knowledge. So likewise, I think every discipline nowadays is multidisciplinary. People, for instance, who do arts or who are good in music, they can also jump into IPRs. So of course, your professional degree helps you, but it's not that that professional degree, that your earlier degree has to be de-linked, isolated from your legal sort of education. So I think that helps. In every case, that would help. So,
Right.
so I would say the law thing just happened, and I'm right now enjoying it.
Right.
And of course, it's extremely tough in the initial years, but uh, we have to move forward.
So it's more like a blessing in disguise, right?
Yes, you can say that.
Yeah. So yeah, to put that into perspective, right? Like you said, the categorization of students based on their merit and choosing a particular field of study. So there are those kinds of preconceived notions here back here in Nepal as well. So I think a lot of viewers are also from Nepal. So it said that the most meritorious or the topmost students would choose for medical or something other lines. The other ones would then go to chartered accountancy or engineering, and then whatever is left would go to arts and all those things. But I think that is changing,
Mm.
because ultimately it's your preference, right? So for people like us who did 3 years law, I think most of our batch had some kind of experience. Like when we were to talk about the composition of our classes, we had doctors, we had entrepreneurs, we had engineers, we had chartered accountants, even pilots. So I think we had a diverse range of people choosing law afterward. So even after in Nepal, they have introduced law in higher secondary level itself. So in plus 2 also you can opt for law. So I guess, which is pretty early in a sense, but I think that's a good thing also, because for someone who is very focused on doing law, or who is determined practicing law, that would be very helpful. And also I think the people doing the 5-year law, they are also, they have a relatively longer exposure to law,
Yes,
relatively through internships and other extracurricular activities. So
yes,
talking
yes,
about that, I would want to touch about your law school experience. I know we were classmates over there, and it was, I think, a wonderful experience to
yes,
be at CLC. So I would want to know your
yes,
perspective about
yes.
internships and all, because as far as I was concerned, I was, doing freelancing stuff already into accounting. I was a qualified person, so I had some instincts here and there, some small projects going on. So I was not focused more on, internships, which I, kind of regret right now, because I think, maybe I should have been involved more into other extracurricular activities, or maybe internships there. But
Mm.
that didn't make a huge difference as far as I'm concerned, because I had the kind of work experience already. I knew how the organizations would perform. So also, working as in various sectors while I was studying also helped me broaden my horizon as far as my understanding of business were there. So which is very helpful now, because I get a sense of how these entrepreneurs think, and I think compared to others, I can provide a better solution, because I understand their problems in a better way. So what about your experience, regarding internships and other extracurricular activities in law school?
See, I had already posted on internships on my LinkedIn,
Right, right,
but I would want to elaborate here. See, first of all, you have to focus on a quality internship rather than doing number of internships,
true, true.
right? Uh, and I would suggest that for a 5 years law student, you should have a mix and match of every kind of internship. For instance, you should go there, work under a designated senior advocate, because that is where you will understand how how he would entertain briefs. He will not directly engage with the client. A briefing counsel would come. He would explain the entire case. A file in advance will come to that senior advocate. There will be a good meeting, and the senior advocate would be able to, in a very short period of time, of course, with all the research he has, the experience he has, he would be able to focus on few important areas on which he would be able to get relief for the client. So this, and I must tell you that I have also briefed senior advocates. I've seen senior advocates appearing in 10 to 15 matters in a day. So 10 to 15 matters, keeping the facts in mind, the judgments, what to speak, what not to speak. I mean, it's very important. Then you should also go and uh, work with a trial advocate, then a corporate stint. Then you can also do a home-based, research-based internship. Then you can also do a high court internship. You can do internships in civil matters, criminal matters. So a mix and match of all these internships would be able to help you, because most of us take decisions because the other person is saying so. So we must experience that first, and then we decide that after 5 years or after 3 years we have to do this. Secondly, see, uh, jumping uh, onto a specific litigation, sometimes it's pre-decided. Sometimes you cannot decide these things, because I'll tell you, when you start your own practice, you cannot choose your clients. So when clients come to you, they have all sorts of problems. So he will have a problem of
Right.
let's say someone uh, not paying him. Possibly it's a civil dispute, it's a recovery suit. There'll be a problem where the police is not helping him, or the police, he wants to file a criminal case against a person. There'll be a check bounce matter also, there'll be a consumer matter
Right.
also. So you cannot choose your clients will decide your business. So
Right.
initially you should not say no to a particular client. So my idea is that you should have different internships only, so that uh, there's a very big confusion in most of us. I mean, I also had that confusion whether to go into a non-litigation corporate side where I'll be doing advisory work, vetting contracts, agreements, etc., and then the other part will be your normal litigation where I'll appear before a court. Now there are pros and cons. Already listed those pros and cons. Good part about those corporate thing is that you are paid slightly well, right? You'll have a salary at the end of the day, at the end of the month. But in this case, you may not have a good salary, and sometimes you may ask to
Right.
your parents for money. So, but if you are taking a decision after doing all these internships, and it's a well thought out decision to the best of your ability, of course, it may not be the best, the ideal, I would say, the decision, but a decision which you think is best, then
Right.
you can in fact satisfy yourself that okay, now I've seen the corporate side also, I've seen that also. But uh, in internships, I would suggest you must, because it's everything is new for you. What I would suggest is you should see the procedural aspects first,
Mm-hmm.
because the learning of law will uh, 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 will go on even till your last day of practice, I would say, till you
Right.
die.
Right.
So, but the procedural aspects, how to draft something, how, what is the court fee for this, what's the role of a clerk, when should I be appearing before a court, when should I not be appearing before a court, when to take adjournments, when not to take adjournments. Of course, I would not encourage taking adjournments, but likewise. So these are the practical aspects. So you learn all these things first, then you jump onto law. Law will, of course, come to you automatically.
Right. So I think to add to your, whatever you said, like, the clients determine the kind of business you would be doing. So that has been my experience as well. When I initially started as, I was particularly trying to focus only to corporate area, but the clients are such that, they would want you to take care of almost everything, even the civil matters or maybe litigation, because initially we did not, when I started my own practice, we did not have a litigation as our service offering. But the situation was such that I had to get into that as well. So relatively we have been developing on that practice as well. So that has been something, like you rightly put, the clients do determine the kind of work you would be doing going forward, because I think the clients these days are looking for a one window service wherein you can take care of, rather than they dealing with multiple lawyers, they would want you to come, as a single service provider, and then maybe you can take care, you can delegate those tasks or assign those tasks to different lawyers. But once they trust you, they would want to only get in touch with you, or they want to reach out to you for any kind of legal services they would be
Yes.
needing.
Just to add here,
Yeah,
your client is looking for a troubleshoot.
right,
He is not looking for a specialized advocate. If you can solve his problem, then you are the best guy for
right,
it, right? So, just one thing. I mean, I also wanted to ask a couple of things because uh, since you, after doing your law,
right,
you worked with an advocate,
right,
you practiced for some time, and then you started your own law firm,
right,
right? As far as, see, all my questions would focus on young lawyers, law students,
right.
especially first generation law students or first generation lawyers.
Hmm.
So one of the important things which law students or young lawyers, uh, I would say, which concerns them would be the financial aspect,
Right.
right? So if you're, let's say, if you're practicing under someone or if you're litigating, you will not get anything. I must tell you,
Hmm.
most of the, even the good chambers will not pay you a very good amount. But you starting your own law firm, starting your own practice after 1.5 years, how did you manage your finances? I mean, I just wanted to know about
Yeah. I think, managing finance while you start your own practice is a very important aspect. That too in corporate law firm, because, you are not on your own. You are not, you don't have only yourself to look after, but you need a team, because, corporate law is all about a teamwork. So, as far as managing finance is concerned, so you want to save it, a little early. That's one thing, because
Yes,
like after CA I worked for some time, right? Even after that, in my law school also, with whatever time I had left, from attending school, I would do some freelance projects. I think in last year of my school, I was working with an investment banking firm. So after that, I came back to Nepal, because initially I had thought to practice law in India itself. So I had an offer from a law firm over there in the tax
okay,
team.
okay,
uh, I went there for a week or so, but eventually realized that I think I should go back, because I had I had an idea until that time that I need to go on my own practice, if I were to do something. But at that point in time, I had stayed in India for almost 8 years then, so I had a very little knowledge about the legal system and how the legal market over here in Nepal. So what I did was, first I joined a corporate law firm, a good one. So working there for almost 1.5 year provided me, all sorts of general basics about how the market worked, how the legal system was, what kind of clients you can focus on. So after that, after that also, after 1.5 year of work, my idea was to go for further studies. I don't know if you're aware or not. I wanted to go for my master's, because I
yes,
wanted
I
to
know, I know.
specialize on a particular field. So at that point in time, my idea was to specialize in finance, because a large number of infrastructure projects, mostly hydropower projects, were coming up here, and I saw an opportunity in project financing. So I wanted to specialize on that aspect first, but things didn't work out, so I had to drop that plan. So immediately after dropping that plan, I had like you said, managing finance is a very important aspect, and I was literally, I had to start from zero, right? So I had to figure out the office. I had to have something basic. I had to build, at least I had to have some few people who can back me up with documentation and all sorts of stuff, because as advisory is a little different from litigation, because litigation, more or less, you can manage on your own, but for corporate practice you need a team behind. A lot of research goes into it, and so for that, what I did was I started relatively very small. I was, because until that time, while working with my previous firm also, I had some clients which the earlier firm had dropped or not taken. So I was working with them. So my suggestion is for someone who would be considering to start practice or maybe enter into corporate law is start very early, recognizing your clients, potential clients, who you can target, who can be your long-term clients. Build a kind of relationship even if you're working for some other firm. I think clients value relationships, and they trust people more than the sometimes more than the firm that you are working with. So it's you, because it's because of you that they want to work with you. So even after leaving the law firm, I had some clients who could pay my monthly bills, at least the rent part, and or maybe a team member or so. So that's how I started. And I think I
Okay.
also got very lucky in sense that I got a very good partner. So within I think a month of starting, I was introduced to someone who had a practice. We had a set up practice. So in those terms, maybe you would also want to look for a partner, who can complement your services, who has started maybe before you. So that might be also a case, so relatively going and asking for partnership may not work. It might not be that straightforward. So maybe if you were to start on your own, you can do your freelance practice and then maybe collaborate with other firms, smaller
Yes.
firms or individual
Yes.
practitioner. So in a way that you are able to sustain for some time, and then maybe you can collaborate more and form partnerships with already existing
Yes.
firms. Because
Yes.
eventually if you are to grow, you need more people, right? So coming back to your questions about managing finance, first thing was I had some clients already, so I was serving them, so they were paying me good enough that I could
Mm.
go on only with
At
them.
least at least
Yeah,
start your.
at least for some time,
Mhm.
right? Other than that, I asked, I went to those clients and asked for more reference, so that I told them that I was going to start my own practice. So
Mm.
maybe they also recommended me to new businesses, new clients, so that
Mm.
helped me to grow in a organic manner. So relatively, while I was serving them, I was also focusing on growth, so which is very important.
Okay.
And now we have almost, I think it's almost 2.5 years since we started, and I have a team of around 15 people. So with advocates, we have chartered accountants, we have trainees, and all sorts of
Okay.
professionals.
Okay.
So now we have grown more into a full service law firm. So earlier we were only corporate, but now we also focus on some corporate litigations. So that has been my experience
Mm.
so far.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
wanted to add few points. I mean,
yeah,
litigation, having your own practice, litigation in the initial years, I must tell you my experience that
right,
there came a time where I had just the balance in my bank account was only two figures. So,
right.
and this would happen with most of the young lawyers,
Hmm.
especially in litigation.
Hmm.
So, you have to ensure that you have a good family support as well
Right,
at that point of time. So, if you don't have a good family support who can at least pay your rents or for food, then it becomes slightly difficult to sort of sustain in the initial years, I must tell you. Then, secondly, let's say once you have taken then that jump, you have started your own practice. There, at times, you will find clients who would want to work, who would want you to, sort of give you work and not pay much. So my take on that was that I would take that work. It's better to have work than to uh, uh, stay idle and not do anything. So I would accept that work. I would give my best, and many a times I must tell you that once I have delivered in a particular case, the people uh, uh, who are known to my client, they have come to me. They have paid me more, and in
right,
fact paid me. So I have sort of recovered my expenses in both the cases, from
right.
both the cases. So you have to perform. You cannot say
Yeah,
you cannot stay idle
true, true.
because there are a lot of things to learn. For instance, I'll give you an example. When I started, I really wanted to be a criminal lawyer,
Hmm.
and then I, of course, had a couple of criminal matters. I was doing some trials. Then suddenly I had some real estate matters. In real estate matters, uh, the clients wanted me to appear in court. before the NCLT also. So that gave me an opportunity to read the insolvency and bankruptcy code, right? Similarly, I would say this client also wanted me to go and argue before a consumer forum. So of course, so I got an opportunity to appear before NCDRC and of course the Supreme Court also. So
Right.
likewise, you should not shut your doors. Take work. You have it's a very delicate balance. I mean, sometimes you will say you will accept work. Sometimes you will say no, I don't want to take work because my finances are important. I cannot work for free because
Right.
for some clients you have to maintain that balance. I mean, so this you nobody can teach you that balance.
Right.
You will have to understand on your own. The
I think
second
that comes with experience as well,
that comes with
because
experience.
like you touched, non-paying clients. So that was
Yes.
initial issues that I faced a lot, because I wanted to take a lot of work. So during that time, I was just trying to deliver a lot of work without talking about the payments and all those things. But, as a young practitioner, collecting payment is very important. Your cash flow is very important, right?
Yes.
And also
Yes.
to add to that, because a lot of young generation lawyers or the recently qualified people want to start their own practice, but my suggestion is don't rush into it, because it might be different for Abhinav or me, because we have already had a certain kind of work experience of working in an organization. Also, we have seen how things work on a corporate setting, or
Mm,
how our office is run, because you have to closely observe those things, because
mm.
it might look fancy to be called a partner of your own law firm or as an individual practitioner, but it's
But
very
you don't have
difficult yeah, right. You don't have work, one thing, and another thing is once you have a team, it's very difficult to manage the team, because if you are alone, you can do whatever you like, right? But
mm,
the time you have a team and you need an office, you need to hire an office, you need to take care of the bills, it's
mm,
going to be difficult. So my idea is, my suggestion is, like, even Jack Ma tells it, until you are 30, you work for a small office, work under a fabulous boss or a wonderful person that can teach you a lot of things. So again, I would say, don't rush into starting on your own, whether it be litigation or
mm,
corporate
mm.
practice. Wait for some time, work under a person that you think is a role model for you, you know
And is sincere
yeah,
and
and
hardworking and
sincere.
hardworking.
True. And it may not be the famous people or the famous
Mm,
lawyers, because frankly telling you, because I used to always fancy of being, like, when I during my CA days also, we used to read a lot about Harish Salve. So he might be one of the reasons why I chose law also, because it sounds funny, because he's a chartered accountant and also a lawyer, and we hear a lot about him. So he
mm,
was kind of my role model. And I would during my law school also, I wondered if I should go for an internship for such a large firm or not. But it doesn't matter the how big the person is you are working for, or how small he is, until and unless he is sincere about the practice. He has the vision of developing you, and then pushing you forward. I think that's good to go. So you need not go with the name, rather go and explore, right? So find the right fit, because while
mm,
you are in law school, you have a lot of time to explore, because you
mm,
can find a good boss during then,
mm,
because it's better to find your boss within the while you are in law school, rather
mm,
than finding it afterwards. So that might be a terrible decision. So
mm.
to add to that, I think somebody has asked the question. I think we've already talked about it. So he says, how did
I
you?
want. I wanted
Yes.
to, Kailash. I wanted to answer Rajendra's question.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
What are
Sure.
the
Go
basic?
ahead. Yeah. So what he
What
asked
are the
was, what are the
basic things
basic
that a
things
law
that a
student
law
must
student
learn?
must learn while gaining law degree? Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
Yes. My take on this is, uh, as far as Indian law is concerned, I think there are some students from Nepal also, people from
Right.
Nepal also.
Hmm.
Uh, at least for Indian students, which may be applicable for you also,
Hmm.
focus on 4 to 5 areas of law initially
Right.
while you are in college also. One is your CPC, Code of Civil Procedure. Second is your Code of Criminal Procedure, CRPC. Third is your Evidence Act. Fourth is your Contract Act. That's it. For the time being, you focus on these 4 things. Once you are understood these things, uh, of course, I'm not expecting you to learn them practically, go through. all the judgments, precedents, etc., but at least a basic overview of the procedural part. I will also not ask you to focus on IPC. That's a substantive law. You will learn about it later on. But at least CPC, CRPC, contract and evidence. I think you'll be safe. So, so that's my answer to the
Right.
basic things that are required, that are
Okay.
expected out of a law.
So Chirag here asks any specific online law courses you would like to suggest. I think I don't know. The question is whether related to after law school or during law school. I think there are a lot of online courses in India because there are some wonderful platforms initiated by law students themselves. So you can check them out for yourself. So it might be also like like Abhinav said, it should depend on your area of interest as well. What you are interested on a longer on what you want to practice. I think somebody wants to know about your decision, of choosing law after engineering because he himself is an engineer, I guess. So what he is asking is if you can ask him to give some insights who wants to do the same after engineering with 1 year experience in the engineering field.
I cannot see this question
No,
now.
he sent it me privately, so I can
That's
tell it. I read it aloud. So is it okay to go for it as by the time one graduates, she will be at the age of 28 and interested in litigation. So will she be able to support the family with financial issues or not at that time? So I think you can ask that.
I think I've already answered that, but still
Right,
I would
right.
say
Yeah, you
I would
can
say
give
yes.
briefly. Yeah,
I'll just touch some points.
right,
Uh, See, encouraging. I would say, to be frank. Of course, in a city like Delhi, you'll find good lawyers, good chambers who can pay well. So if a chamber can initially pay you somewhere like 20, 25, 30, possibly to start with no
right.
experience, I would say, that's a
Mm-hmm,
good way to start. And if you
mm-hmm,
can somehow manage your expenses in such a way that, for
mm-hmm,
instance, if you have a family and some of the members of the family, they are working,
mm-hmm.
then the burden on you to sort of uh, satisfy everyone will be slightly less if everyone
Right.
else is working or some of them are working. So,
Mm-hmm.
and litigation is very, I would say, discouraging at times
True, true.
because see, uh, at times your chamber, your senior would ask you to research on a proposition. You will have to sit all night, research on the proposition, and you may also think, of course, if you're comparing yourself with other colleagues of yours. For instance, I
Right.
had my engineering colleagues who are being paid well.
Well paid.
At that point of time, you will think whether I am doing the right thing. But
Right.
the positive takeaway from all this is that you have to focus on gaining skills, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, some people have also asked me when to have your own practice,
Right.
right?
Right. So that's
Now,
an important question.
yes, when to have your own practice. Now, I'll sort of distinguish a 5 year law course from a 3 year law course. In a 3 year
Right.
law course, you have people who already have some experience and then they come and pursue their law. So, for them, as you said, uh, uh, a basic know-how, a basic knowledge of how an organization works, how to be formal, how to handle clients, strategize a problem, etc., etc. You've already done a part of it in your earlier work experience. So for them, they may have their own practice early. But for a 5 year law student, if you don't have a background, a legal background, I would say, then I would suggest you work for some time, gain experience, and the day, I would say the day, I'm not telling you to uh, emphasize on or the focus on the legal aspect, whether you are technically capable, but the day you are able to handle your client or
Right.
clients, that is the day when you can start your own. If you
Right.
can,
Right.
without knowing anything, if you can answer a client, that is the day when you can have your own.
It's more like a standard answer. It depends on case to case basis. That's what we advise most of our clients. When they ask a
Yes.
general question. So it's similar to that, because some things come naturally to some people, like managing clients, or talking to people, or whatever that is, bringing in new business. Because a law, when you're starting alone as a lawyer, I think particularly in case of a litigation lawyer, you are everything of that organization. Right from your office clerk to the
A clerk,
partner, or
a
whatever you
type, a
are.
typist,
Yeah,
a
a
clerk,
typist, a
uh,
clerk, a researcher, everything. You have to do
uh,
all things and anything. So another aspect, I think Samyukta
driver also.
asked was, yeah, sometimes. So Samyukta asked was, what's your take on moot court? So I'll tell briefly about moot court, because this is something I had no experience about. In 3 years law also, I tried getting into the law, moot court society, but fortunately didn't manage, or unfortunately didn't manage, whatever the case was, because the number of students that the campus law center, Delhi University has, is it's a huge number of people, and not everyone gets into the kind of society they would want to. So unfortunately, I didn't get into the moot court. So I have, I had relatively almost no experience about the moot court. So the first time when I, appeared at the court, it was my moot court sort
First,
of thing.
moot court.
Yeah, the first, yeah, first court. So, but since I had other experiences, it went out pretty well, because I knew what things would go, and I had observed, other court procedures. So that didn't matter for me so much. I think Abhinav can put his perspective on moot
See,
courts
on
too.
on moot courts, I would say, uh, the moment you enter your law school, don't jump into moots,
Hmm.
right? See, some people have criticized me for taking an extreme position, saying that Abhinav wants to discard moots,
Yeah,
right?
I think you keep on posting very insightful things in your LinkedIn. I think young practitioner can follow him as well, because he
So, so,
writes very
so
nice things
yeah, let
about it.
so
Yeah.
let me complete it. So I am not at all discarding moots or the concept of mooting. What I'm saying is that in your very first year, now as far as I understand, the first year of a 5 year law school is very general in nature. You have general topics. For instance, I guess sociology and all those subjects are also there. We have not read those subjects. But in
Mhm.
your very first year, or possibly the second year also, you are given a mood problem, and people want you to argue on that mood problem, one way or the other. See,
Right.
of course, it's a good experience, it's a good practice. That is one way of looking at it. But I would suggest you first must at least understand some of the basic subjects, because when a problem comes to you, it's not only a criminal problem, it's not only a problem of procedure, it's not only a problem of, let's say, IPC. It's a problem which may include IPC, which may include possibly criminal procedure, which may also include the interpretation of statutes, which comes in our case. I think the interpretation of statutes came in the third year, possibly, which I that's what I remember, right? Because the
Right.
question of law is there, you have to sort of interpret it and all those things. And the way, in your first year and possibly in your second year, the way you read judgments is very different from the way you would understand a judgment in your final year. So what I would suggest is, in order to balance both the aspects, of course you should have that experience. I'm not saying, of course, working on a real problem is a totally different thing. And when you're arguing before a court, uh, arguing and standing, and someone, the defense counsel or the respondent counsel disturbing you, the judge not able to mm, uh, is not able to understand your point, or possibly he want you to focus on some other important point. Likewise, there are many variables which are not in your control.
Right.
So real problem is unlike your mood problem, but in order to have a balance of both, what I would suggest is that the colleges should have a team. This might be happening in most of the colleges, but when you have a team of people from all the years, then you can sort of divide your work. So people who have just started, they can be given a work of possibly legal research. Then there will be a team who can do a bit of drafting or possibly written submissions. There will be a team who can argue. There will be a team who can brief an arguing counsel. So likewise, you can sort of segregate the roles. You can have students from all the years, and that's where you can have a holistic, because now the first year student can learn from a final year student also. And a final year student has already done some internships, some real internships before with an advocate. You must have seen codes. So you first year student can learn from the final year student, and the final year student can also rely on a first year student's research.
Right.
So I think that could be a balance of both. But directly wanting to have moots, you know, in your first year when you don't understand a lot of things. Of course, I also didn't understand a lot of things when I was studying. That
Right.
that could be a problem in your later years. That's what I
Right.
feel about mooting.
Yeah, because I think for particularly for the 3-year students, the time is very short, right? So
It's
you
very
don't
short.
have,
Yes,
yeah, because it's
you
like
cannot.
you cannot allocate like I'll do this because it passes so early that you don't even realize that you're already done.
Yes,
It's actually going through the classes would be
yes.
it's the only time you think that the time is longer. Apart from that, I think it passes pretty quick. So another coming back to the questions of litigation as a career. Most people ask one question, whether you should specialize or you should go for more of a general practice. I think we covered some aspect of that as well. So what is your take on that? So how
See,
should a young lawyer proceed?
see. My take on this is that at least in your initial years, you must not specialize,
Hmm.
because I have seen. I must tell you, if I see the litigation in different courts in let's say Delhi, you have your trial courts, you have your high court, you have your Supreme Court as well, right? So I've seen trial, I've seen high court, I've seen Supreme Court. Especially in special leave petitions, I've done the subject matter of those special leave petitions is so varied that you cannot focus on just one subject in a special leave petition, because there's a question of law involved. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Uh, uh, Once I was working with my senior, then
Hmm.
this tax issue came. Then we had to draft a special leave petition. So, on that, the first thing that you do is you see the impugn order. You find out the perversity in the impugn order. You also check the propositions of law which are there in the impugn order, and you also see the settled position. Right. Once you have done this research, then you jump on to advising your client whether to file a special leave petition or not. I'm saying whether to advise. I'm not saying you take the case and then you simply file the special leave petition, because a special leave petition takes possibly 2 to 3 days to draft and file it.
Hmm.
Right. You do your review and all those things, research also, but it takes just 5 seconds to dismiss. And the only order that will come will be heard, dismissed. Right. So, I mean, uh, uh, 24 into possibly 3 days job. If it's a 3 day job, 24 into 3 hours
Right.
you're taking for preparing a special leave petition, and then it getting dismissed in just 5 seconds.
Hmm.
It's very discouraging. So, I
Right.
mean, let me come to the point. So, even in high court, let's say, uh, for instance, I did a tax matter once, and there was a proposition of law involved. Now, these are the forums, these are the courts wherein you argue on law. Of course, you have your trial in high court also, uh, not the criminal trial, but the appellate work mostly centers around a proposition of law, right? Where you see the settled position and then you draft an article, right? Now, in such a case, for instance, if you, for instance, a proposition once came in a tax matter that penal statutes have to be construed strictly, right? Now, penal, now this is a proposition of law which can be applicable in other areas also. But
Right.
once you have done this matter, you have a comprehensive understanding and you learn other things as well, and you'll be
Right.
in a better position. So initially, at least, you should read everything, because see, only the only some of the parts of a particular statute will be different. The overall scheme may not be very different. So if you see the overall scheme is, you have a problem, someone is aggrieved, he approaches the court, you have to file a petition, then there will be a reply to that petition, and rejoinder, reply, and all those pleadings will be once completed. Then you have your
Right.
final arguments, and then it's decided. So this is the basic overview, and the jurisdiction of that court or the tribunal will be specific to that statute,
Right.
right? Our magistrates, they have to see CRPC, NCLT, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code for in insolvency matters. In High Court, let's say writ, scope of a writ petition. Supreme Court 136, the settled position and the scope of Article 136. So
Mhm.
this, if you see the basic sort of uh, uh, process of a court is the same,
Right.
just that you are understanding new provisions, and you have to of course learn the precedents, understand the precedents also. So I think you should not specialize, it will help you, at least initially you must not. But if you're a person like for instance, like you have specifically decided to do, let's say, for instance, in your case, you are working on specific aspects of law, then it's a separate thing again.
Right.
Your clients will determine that.
Again, I agree to you. Even though my field of practice is corporate law, corporate law itself is a very wide
Yes, it's a very
area of
wide.
practice.
Yes.
Because if I were to talk about what particular area in corporate law, then I might come up with 10 or 15 practices more.
Yes.
So like you said, going specializing early on may benefit some people, provided what kind of expertise they have. Because I've seen some people who are very concerned, or who have the idea, who have a definite idea of what they want to do very early on. Like, I've seen some people doing extremely well in dispute resolution or arbitration because they chose it early. But for most of the people like us, even in corporate field, if we are going for a corporate practice, the clients would want you to cater, provide a more of a general kind of services, wherein the clients wants to reach out to you asking everything. Like my clients ask me some provisions of labor law, which might be
Mm,
different. They might be
mm,
asking me some other court procedures as to how to file a suit in case of dishonor of check. I cannot say no to them, right? So as the
mm,
counsel, I am supposed to uh, know these. Or even if I don't know, I have to research it and get back to them. I cannot say no,
yes.
because the moment I say
Mm,
no, the client may think about switching, going to another person. So that
mm,
should be also something put into consideration, whether while deciding what you want to,
mm,
whether you want to practice or not.
mm,
There are a few others, like Abhinav said, some professionals who have joined law, like myself, who have done chartered accountancy, may want to specialize. Like I've seen a lot of people going for taxes, right? Or maybe only company law matters. It helps. It helps. It depends on the kind of market or the kind of clients you want to serve. So that's also very important. So if you are to build a niche practice, so if you are to build a niche practice, you should also look for similar kind of
mm.
clients. So
But
that
but
might,
but
yeah.
I'll just add, take out time and learn other subjects also,
Right, right,
because
true, true.
these
That
will help.
always, yeah, that always helps, because knowing, and I think specializing on later days, maybe after 5-7 years of practice, you may go on to specialize on a particular matter, and that might come incidentally as well, because you take a
Yes.
lot of
But
similar kind of
but
cases. Because right,
but I generally term it as forced specialization,
right.
where
Because once you have a name on certain taking or winning certain kind of cases, people will come to you taking
see
For
if
similar
if
matters.
if for a particular day
Hmm.
you are getting 10 matters to argue and all are criminal,
Hmm.
then of course you would not go and learn about other subjects and not
Right.
focus on other subjects. For instance, you will not go and do a RERA matter or a consumer matter, let's say, for instance, or an NCNT matter, because you also have 24 hours in a day, right?
True.
So I generally term it as a forced specialization. I would also do it tomorrow
Right.
if I have,
Eventually, that's the fate, or that's the destiny that
because
the
we have
career will
24
choose for you.
because we have 24 hours only,
Right.
right? So there is one question. So I just wanted to answer and one more question on this. A lot
Right.
of people, uh, for instance, who do law from IIT Kharagpur. I mean, I think that's the college
Yeah, I
where
think
they
IP
have,
related people,
and it's
mostly on
a I,
intellectual property
so
and
so
all. Yeah.
most of them would want to enter into IP related litigation or career.
Right.
I would rather suggest that you should not pre-decide, because I have friends from this college, and I met them when I was doing my IPR related internships, right?
Hmm.
And I'm also an engineer, so I had also thought, this IPR thing is very
Yeah.
fancy, and since I'm an engineer, it will be an added advantage to me.
True.
I think you should not pre-decide, you should
Hmm.
not prejudge. Keep an open mind about all the fields. Your
Hmm.
uh, uh, your first, I would say, stint with a lawyer after your law will, in most of the cases, will decide your career,
Right.
right? If you stay with him for a slightly longer time, I would say, because uh, you keep on doing similar kind of cases, and then you also think as if you have to sort of continue the legacy. So
Right.
likewise, but I would suggest, don't, especially for people who are from engineering backgrounds and who have jumped into law only for a specific reason that they would want to do IPR,
IP. True.
right? So I would tell them, I would advise them, don't pre-decide,
Hmm.
keep an open mind about it. You can decide about what to follow only after you complete your law,
Hmm.
right? And after you've seen chambers, you've seen litigation, you've seen courts, you've seen senior advocates,
Right.
and then you once you take a call after doing everything, then it will be a rational decision to the best of your ability. That's what I'll say.
Right. So, okay, so coming back to that, our discussion, another thing, very important aspect for every lawyer, which, most of the students or most people do not, focus on, is drafting, right? So what we tend to assume is, like, we have already completed law, or, we have cleared certain degrees. So drafting comes easy or comes naturally to us because that's what most people assume. But we have seen that a lot of people cannot even draft an email properly, let alone drafting the legal documents. So what do you think, what areas, or when do they start actually thinking about how to improve their drafting skills? Because writing an examination paper or even a moot court submission is a different thing, but in real world scenarios,
Mm.
advising your clients, or drafting petitions is totally different, right? So how can
Yes.
young lawyers improve on that, or when should they start focusing on that?
See, again, drafting, uh, in my opinion, drafting can start anytime. If you start it after your first year, or possibly, so I'm talking about 5-year law students. 3-year students can start anytime, right?
Right.
So, but uh, the couple of things that you can keep in mind. Number one, before drafting, you have a look at a standard good draft
Hmm.
as a template,
Right.
right? In my LinkedIn post, I've already
Right.
stated that these are the basic ingredients of a draft, of a good draft, right?
Right.
And then you also look at your standard templates or formats given by the tribunals. You have to adhere to those templates. For instance, I'm doing one RERA matter. It's an appellate appeal, RERA appeal. So there's a standard format for that. So you have to follow that form. Of course, you
Right.
can follow that, but the basics will not change. Have a good standard draft. See how the senior or your advocate has drafted that petition. Number one. Second would be you focus on the important issues, right?
Right.
I would generally recommend is that your first thing should be where I have to file this petition,
Right.
whether it's a high court or a civil court or possibly whether I have to go to the Supreme Court. Let's say, for instance, you decide your forum, you decide your prayers, because your forum and prayers, they are intrinsically linked,
Right.
right? So, for instance, you cannot if you will go to the High Court under 226 criminal writ petition and seek registration of FIR, High Court in most of the cases would say go go to the magistrate under section 156(3) of the CRPC, right? Of
Right.
course, courts under 226 can also give directions.
Entertain that.
Yes, because it's a discretionary power. But it will not do it because there are some settled precedents also. If you see your
Right.
uh, uh, Sakiri Vasu or Lalita Kumari, I don't remember it
Right.
exactly. So you have to decide your forum, your reliefs, and these have to be intrinsically linked.
Right.
And then at the same time, you have a standard template, a
Right.
format.
Right.
You segregate the issues, the
Right.
important issues, the propositions of law, and then you start. Once you have drafted, you sit with your senior and get it checked.
Right.
So at least the first step will be covered.
Yeah, I think, from litigation perspective, that's important. From our corporate perspective also, what it needs is a lot of research, right? And then, giving practical solutions, because I see a lot of, young people coming up with, citing a lot of laws, but they do not have a conclusion or, what the client would want to hear, because the client wants a solution, not the list of laws, right? So as corporate practitioner, what we need to focus especially on is, you read the law, you make your own interpretation. Based on your interpretation, you provide a solution, not just list down the laws and then give your client that this is the law. Because if the clients were to read the law, why would they need a lawyer, right? So that's what you are there for. So I think Sumit wants to add something onto that. So Sumit is here. I'll just unmute him and then he can add something, because he said he wanted to add something. Just a minute.
Yeah. Hi, Abhinav.
Yes, so
Yeah, good to see you. And hi, Kailash. Thank you so much.
Hi.
So we were talking at length regarding that on the basic level. So I am also like a qualified chartered accountant before
Right.
doing my law. So we read the nuances of law of CA,
Right.
and we have that articleship training, and we learn
Right.
almost everything there, the income tax return filing or audits. Now in 2016 we have that GST came in 17.
Right.
Some CAs seeing that kind of opportunity there, they focus there and specialize there, so there is no harm, but they must know
True.
what is the other things, how is it
Yes.
related.
Mm.
Similarly,
Exactly.
like I went in for specialization in NCLT. So law today being so multidisciplinary, one thing is that clients do decide what you have to do, but then the other thing is also that it has repercussions at different places.
Yes.
And
Right.
once you don't read the other laws, you cannot know that that effect will come there. Only
Right.
if you read that law can you know that. So like I am having professional misconduct matters of chartered accountants, so
Right.
my knowledge of auditing and financial statements come into play. And
True.
since I am a lawyer also, I'm not just a CA, so I find that evidence act, the forensic reports, the
True.
limitation act, all these things come into play because I've read those laws. If I
Right.
would have just been very strict with that,
Mm.
so I would just say that we need to stick with that adage, which is the time and again we say that a lawyer must know everything of something and something of everything. Definitely
Yes.
3 to 4
Right.
Yes.
laws
True.
he
True.
has to decide upon. And
Exactly.
the knowledge of the procedural laws is very important, because if
Yes.
Right.
you read Substantive law, tomorrow the law changes, the Competition Act came, the Information Technology Act came. You can read it anytime. That law school
Right.
will not teach you. This is just for the advice for the law students, I think, are here. But this procedural law is very important. That with the
Yes.
Right.
senior also practically and academically from the law books.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Substantive law, tomorrow you can be comfortable to read that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
So
a very important point, very well put by Sumit. And also, on other aspects, like maybe I don't think there is a misunderstanding when we say that your clients determine your practice. It's not as if you move with the flow, or you move with the intention that, suppose if it is not your area but still the client wants it, you need not go and be an expert on that area, right? So what you can do is you delegate or you assign that task. So again, the thing is, you have to have a vision, what you want to be or what you want to do, maybe after maybe 5 years down the line, so 10 years down the line. So you need to have that vision, and you should not deviate. But having said that, you should also have a broad vision about reading multiple laws, or taking assignments that may not fall within your area of specialization. So it's starting as a general practice, you can narrow it down as your practice progresses. Because there is this saying by Falias Nariman, I think I that's very apt. He says, don't specialize. When you specialize, you go down the slope, and of course you make a lot of money, because
lot of money.
ultimately, yeah, because ultimately you would be known for your expertise, and your expertise can only be on certain areas, right? So you should always focus on those areas, the core competencies that you have. But having said that, from the day one itself, you cannot say that I have specialized on these things and I just want to take matters relating to this. So that might be one thing. So I think we are running out of time as well, so
I'll just
maybe.
complete one important point here.
Right, sure.
Just a small point in just a moment.
Yeah.
In just one sentence, that it's a kind of a little gamble also. You have to mitigate your risk. And I would go a step further and say you must know a little of litigation, you must know a little of advisory and compliance also.
Exactly.
Now, what has happened
True.
in COVID? All litigation has stopped, all courts have stopped. If somebody is
Right.
doing some agreements work, some consulting advisory work, he's not much impacted. So when you
Right.
make it vast, it is always a good thing, no? Education
Right.
it fits in ways in our unconscious mind which we don't know.
True.
Yes.
True.
So
Okay.
somebody wants to add, Srijana.
Hello.
Yeah, just one small uh, uh, answer to a question that was posed to
Yeah.
me.
Sure.
So a law student asked me, sir, how to read a subject,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So see, I'll simply uh, give my
I
opinion
think
on
I
this.
think you can add that to reading a file, because that's also an important aspect
Yes.
as a
So first of all,
law
if
practitioner.
you, let's say, if you're reading a new subject, first of all you need to have your Bare Act with you, right? Your
Mhm.
Bare Act is very important, and it's important to go through the entire Bare Act to understand what the Bare Act means, the statement of objection, all those things, and then the sections, the introductory sections, and then finally the important sections of a Bare Act. After that, what you can do is you can, for instance, I would say for Campus Law Center, the good thing was that we had one case material with us.
Right.
It
Right.
had a compilation of all the relevant case laws, landmark
Mhm.
judgments pertaining to a particular subject.
True.
If you have that compilation ready, you can go through that compilation. Otherwise, what you can do is you can uh, sort of segregate important sections, have a good basic book on that subject. For instance, let's say if I have to understand criminal procedure, the good book to start with is Kelkar, right? The thicker one, right? There are two Kelkars. So you have that Kelkar and then that Berak, go through the Berak, and if possible, then you jump onto the commentaries if required. And if I add how to read a file, so couple of things that you must consider. One, when you open the file, you see the title, the section under which that petition has been filed. I would say I'm iterating these things. Go to the prayers also, see what has been sought, Then you understand the scope of that section. For instance, if it's a writ petition, scope of 226. Then you see, uh, at the same time, you can start reading the entire file.
Mm-hmm.
Don't read notes, your own notes in the first reading. Go through the entire file, understand what the case is about. At the same time, you can cull out important propositions. For instance,
Right.
if there's a, let's say if there's a petition wherein the bail has been cancelled, right? So the important proposition will be cancellation of bail and the grounds on which it can be cancelled,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can
Right.
just simply write it somewhere that cancellation of bail is an important topic here where I have to sort of answer as a respondent, let's say here.
Right.
Then you, when you have gone through the entire petition, you can mark important points. You can at the same time read the annexures also. Then I would suggest is uh, you directly go and research on those propositions, understand the bail cancellation of bail law,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you reread your file, make notes, and then see how I have to counter that petition.
Right. Yeah, I think reading is very important as a lawyer. I think that's one of the most important aspect and often overlooked, right? So even in corporate practice, in advisory practice, if you do not have the background of the client that you are trying to advise, or you don't have the background of the problem or the issue in question, it's very difficult to advise, because that's and for that, I think in advisory practice, it's more important to know the business as well, to understand the business scenarios. So that
Mm,
might be quite challenging for young lawyers. So my suggestion is, before advising any corporate client on a particular issue, it's very important to inquire about the nature of business, what they do, and what kind of law or legislation govern their operations. So that's very important, because they might be asking one specific question. So it might be as simple as a breach of contract, right? Breach of any provision of contract or termination of contract. But if you do not have or an overview or understanding of the nature of business, it's very difficult for you to, you may just generalize it as any other case, and then your advice may not be
mm,
adequate for the client. So as a corporate practitioner, I think in litigation, like Abhinav already put it nicely, how to read a file. From in corporate advisory, what my suggestion is to understand the business well first. Whoever client or whatever client you are serving, it's very important to know, have a brief background. You don't need to know all the nitties and gritties, nitty gritties and everything about the operation. You don't have to go in such a depth that you would have to run that business someday or the other. It's just that you need to understand in which domain particularly that business is, or what legislation would be impacting their business. So I guess I think we can summarize now. So I'd ask Abhinav to summarize, from today's discussion, what are the important aspects to start litigation as a career, because that's the main thing. Though we have discussed, a variety of issues, and then we can conclude.
Uh, See, it's not easy to summarize everything, but
Right.
I'll just focus on few of the important points. Uh, Stick to your curriculum. Whatever you're reading, stick to your curriculum. Uh, Ensure that, keeping in mind my take on moods, my how to read a subject, and the internships and all, you have to at the same time ensure that your 5 or 3 years in school
Mhm.
uh, are enjoyable,
True.
right? So and that's very important. So stick to your curriculum, understand things. You can, after 3 years, after 5 years, you can sort of segregate that these are the subjects which I don't like. For instance, I don't like tax, to be frank.
Right.
Although if a matter will come, I will put in my best. But if you'll ask me, Abhinav, whether you like tax, I will not say yes. I- so one thing is this: you can at the end of your 4 years, 5 years, or 3 years, possibly segregate your entire curriculum into two parts. One is the
Right.
subjects which you like and the subjects which you don't like. Right? Your first chamber, that you join. Now, a lot of people ask me, Abhinav, I wanted to join a criminal chamber. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. See, in India, it's not easy to find a chamber which will satisfy all your needs,
Right.
right? There'll be a money problem somewhere. Somewhere there'll be some other issues. Some chamber will be in, for instance, if you're staying in South Delhi, you have to go to Dwarka, and it's a 1 hour 45 minutes journey, let's say. So there are a lot of factors. So you find a chamber which is good enough to start with, and with all the possible options that you have, you join, you try to maximize your learning, and then you slowly and slowly, once you're able to understand the profession, the practical aspects of the profession, then you decide that yes, these are the things I can sort of manipulate, these are the things I can sort of now focus on, crystallize, etc., etc. Likewise, you can do that, keeping in mind my, so obviously these are my opinions on specialization, all those things. Of course, I
Right.
would suggest this is a balanced and my way of doing.
Right, right. So I think, that's the pretty much kind of a roadmap for most of the people, that may work, because I think that's a tested and tried roadmap by most of the people. I just want to add few things, what you can do after your law school. Whatever you do in your law school, make sure that they are enjoyable, because they are not going to come back. So do as much as possible, whatever you can do, have fun, study well, intern as much as possible, do extracurricular activities, because they ultimately add to, your career later on. Because, like Steve Jobs said, you cannot connect the dots, forward. You just connect the dots backwards. So whenever you are, maybe 5 years, 6 years down the line, you would realize, you learned something, or you met someone in law school that might be, professionally enriching for you later on. So what I'd like to add is, after law school, my recommendation is to work under a lawyer, a good lawyer. you know it meant, like I said before, it need not be your role model or the best of the lawyer that's in the market. Just go and explore, because I think when you are fresh out of college, there is not much of a burden on you to work for a longer period of time. Go join a law firm, join a lawyer, work for some time. So if you feel that's a right fit, continue with him for some longer period of time. If it looks like it's not working, because it would not be mutually enriching for you and the lawyer concerned, or the law firm that you work under, if you have you know say, if you're not satisfied with the kind of work you are doing, or even the law firm is not satisfied with your performance. Because also another aspect is communication. You should communicate your expectation really well. So you should have clear vision of what you want out of that work, or your experience, or working with a law firm. So that should be there. So you should have a clear idea, clear goal of what you want, and what you
But
want to, where you want to go, maybe few years down the line. And then maybe maybe after 3 or 4 years, I would say, it might sound much, but if you are learning and if you are enjoying the work, it's not a long time. And I think it's a reasonable time period to spend at a law firm. Because if you spend 3 or 4 years, maybe you would be considered to take the firm forward itself, because you would be part of the team. You would know each and everything so well that maybe the firm would not want to let you go, and you can continue with the firm. So that might be a case. And even then, if you want to start on your own, that helps, that gives a lot of backup for you, because 3 or 4 years of experience, you know your clients, the working procedure, how the firm is managed, how the partner manages it, all the operations. So you'd have a reasonable kind of experience to go out on your own. So that's my suggestion, for at least for 3 years at least. So work with someone. So, and if you are also going for higher studies, my recommendation is, like, I worked for a year and then I tried for higher studies. So my suggestion is, don't go for higher studies straight away after your graduation. So get a clear view of, get some work experience and know, how things work. Because going directly for, you study law for 5 years or 3 years and you again join LLM after a year, I think it's just a continuation of that. there would not be much of a value addition. And again, master's program is more of a networking platform rather than enriching your skills or adding more to your knowledge. It's more of a networking platform. So my suggestion is have a couple of years of work experience. Until then, you would have figured out, okay, this is the area of practice that I want to go, and so maybe that would help with your LLMs as well. So that's my take.
Just 2 points.
Right.
So joining after law school, it's
Mm-hmm.
better to join than to sit at
Right. True.
number one, because in any case you will learn something, right? Secondly, the fun part is very important. I mean, you talked about uh, uh, enjoying your law school, because that's very important, because after you leave your law school, the only fun part will be the litigation part, and
Right.
that too will also depend on you. If you enjoy
Right.
litigation, then you'll find some fun there. Otherwise,
You'll keep missing your law
it
school.
will be a problem. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it for now. So I think it was a wonderful discussion. Great insights from Abhinav, and to take this forward, I think we'd have another session, sometime this coming week on LLM admission. So that's an important aspect. So I'll let you know the details. So I'd want to thank everyone for joining. The videos would also be uploaded in YouTube, so that it can be shared for further reference. So I'd like to extend a lot of thanks for Abhinav for joining me. It was a
Thank
wonderful
you.
discussion, and
Thanks to you also.
yeah. So with that, I'll end the session. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.